Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Chris. Welcome. And today is our last video of 2025. I'm really excited for today's video because what we are going to do today is we are going to set some goals for my small crochet business, The Enchanted Skein, for 2026. If you have been here before and watched a few of my videos, then you probably know that I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to certain things like data and productivity. So I'm going to be sharing with you a process that I use and have used for the last several years for my personal goals every year. And this year I'm going to apply it for the first time to my small business. If you didn't know, I actually set up my LLC in March of 2025. So when 2025 got started, I didn't have any business goals because I didn't know there was going to be a business. So this is the first time that I'm truly setting some goals. So I just kind of wanted to share with you how my process works and then actually come up with those goals while we're doing this. The method that I use to set my goals doesn't really have a name or anything. I think I've kind of taken bits and parts from other systems and stuff like that. So what I do is probably not groundbreaking, but I have taken those bits and pieces and kind of put it together in a way that has worked well for me. One of the things that I think differs in the way that I do things versus the way a lot of the quintessential goal setting processes work is that I do not sit down in a moment and list out everything that I want to do. I keep a running list all year long of things that I want to do and might possibly use as goals for the following year. And I do that for a few different reasons. One of them primarily being that if you pick a date and time to sit down and just write down and set your goals, I feel like that's just a snapshot of that moment in time. It's the mood you're in, the mind frame you're in. You might be excited for the new year. Maybe you set some stuff that's a little much. I don't know, but it's sitting down and trying to do it all at once to me feels like it's not fair game to all the ideas and thoughts and things that have come throughout the year. So in my iPad, I keep a list and I just start writing things down whenever they come to me. So the moment strikes and I go, yeah, I want to do that at some point. I write it down. It could be big, it could be small. It's just anything and everything that in that moment I don't have time necessarily to do it or I'm not going to do it, but it's something that I want to do. The other reason I do this is sometimes it sheds light on things that you can actually achieve without even focusing on them. So one example of that is last year when I did start the company, I started a list so that when it came to 2026, I would have a list of things that I could choose from to set my goals. And one of the things I had written on there was to write my very first pattern. Now, in October, I was looking for a pattern for a Frankenstein themed snuggler. I couldn't find one. And I just kind of organically ended up creating my own pattern and releasing my first pattern. So when I go back to that list, every so often when I go to write something new, I'll look up and go, wow, I achieved that already, and take it off the list, or I achieved that already. And it happens with several things throughout the year that you don't even think about. So I think it's pretty cool to kind of keep that. And it's not something you were necessarily trying for, but those little dopamine hits of crossing them off is pretty good. So I think what we'll do first is I've got my iPad here. I'm going to share the screen with you and we're going to go through what I have on my list. And then I'll tell you how I narrow things down so that we can eventually get to the point of where we've identified our goals. Now, I do not ever set any more than 3 goals for the year. I've found that that's kind of the sweet spot. I've had years where I tried to just focus on 1. I've had years where I've tried 5. Now, this is all on my personal side, obviously, because it's the first time I'm doing them for the business, but I think the same thing kind of applies. When I had only 1, it was really easy to fall into burnout and not want to do anything for that particular goal. If you have 2 or 3, then at least you can kind of shift focus if you need to, and you need a break from one or the other. When it comes to 5, it can kind of feel a little overwhelming to figure out which ones you can execute. And I found that at times I spent so much time on each individual one that nothing really ever got complete. So again, I find that 3 is the sweet spot. A lot of times some of these will organically fall into place together. Other times it's something where you do really need to have focus on each individual goal, but we'll see how that works out based on what goals we choose. Let's take a look at what I have on my list. First up, I have an Etsy relaunch. Now, I know for a fact, regardless, I need to make some changes in Etsy when it comes to how I'm pricing things and stuff like that. We've talked about that before, but this was really like a relaunch of the whole Etsy store. When I first set up my Etsy store, I obviously didn't know what I was doing, but I kind of put together my banner and I just slapped some things together, my about me and all that stuff. And I was really hoping like at some point to go back and revisit that, especially after having done it for a little while, so that I could, make it a little bit more my own and feel a little bit more like my true vibe. And it just kind of doesn't at this point. So it's something that I was considering doing, just kind of relaunching the entire thing, new banner, new about me, and all that good stuff. Next up is 3 or more markets. That's pretty self-explanatory. I want to achieve the goal of at least getting 3 markets done for the year. Free Patreon, question mark. I was considering doing a Patreon. I've joined a couple of paid Patreons here and there, and I've joined some free ones. I didn't know free Patreon was a thing you could even do until I joined Carrie's at Traveling Pony Studios. And it's pretty cool. It's neat to be in there and chatting and stuff like that. And the fact there's no cost to anyone to have to do that was pretty cool to me. So it was just something I was considering doing. Launching my website is the next thing on the list. This is something I've had on my mind since the moment I set up the LLC. I really want to have a place where folks can go to get things like a really nice way of getting all the patterns that I recommend, any of the items that I use that I've shared on the channel. Rather than having like a Google Doc and stuff, I can kind of envision all of these things in a website. I also want to have a store on my website so that if folks who are already familiar with my work, maybe from Etsy or whatnot, want to come and get a cheaper price for the same goods because I don't have all those Etsy fees, offering that option. Next up is design at least one pattern or series of patterns. Similar to the list that I keep with my ideas for my possible goals, I have several other lists. And one of those is pattern ideas. Ever since I've started crochet almost and considering possibly doing this as a small business, I have written down ideas for patterns that I hope to one day make. It's something that can be challenging and can kind of take away some time from market prep and things like that, but it's definitely something that I want to consider. Next on the list is become monetized. I would love to be able to have a little bit of income from making these videos and things like that. I think anyone who starts making these videos, yes, you make them because you love and enjoy them, but in the back of your mind, you always have that thought of it would be really cool if I could get monetized. Next up, self-explanatory again, is go live on YouTube. It's something I've wanted to try. It's just, I've got to figure out how the logistics of all of that stuff works. Similarly, Palm Street is on my list. I would love to try to do a little Palm Street market. I've watched a few other folks who have done it here on YouTube, and it seems pretty cool and something I thought I might want to give a shot. I actually set up my account to be a Palm Street vendor like way back, but I have yet to use it. Instagram weekly posts. I have not done a good job of my social media when it comes to Instagram. I found that it was a lot to try to figure out how to plan all of this content and thought to myself, I just need to pick one and focus on it. And that was YouTube. But now that I kind of have a good rhythm going with YouTube, I want to try to start incorporating the other social media platforms a little more. Release one crochet product is next on the list. This is something I'm super excited about. Again, I have another list in my iPad of crochet tools that I have ideas for. Some things that I've never seen before, some that are just my version of it for convenience and things like that. I've gone as far as creating some of them for myself and using them and kind of prototyping and things like that, but I have yet to scratch the surface. I would love to release a crochet product or have something at my booth for crocheters if they come along. So yeah, it's something that I've considered for a good while as well. Short form YouTube. Similar to the Instagram thing, my understanding is that short form content on YouTube reaches sometimes a completely different audience because there's folks out there that will not sit down and watch the longer videos. They only scroll through the shorts. So I would like to start incorporating some more of that short form content, even if it's the same content from like this video, but just bite size, I guess. So it's something that I want to consider looking into. Amazon storefront. So this one is similar to the thought on the website, an easy place to go get everything that I'm referencing. So I thought it would be cool to have a storefront where I can put everything that I use and purchase for my business and have it as a one-stop place for you to go and take a look at anything that I purchase on Amazon. Use resin and light in another crochet project. So this one is just, I had a really great time when I was making Cindermint, my dragon with the light up horns and the resin. I just had a really good time with it. So I wrote down when that happened that I wanted to do that again some point in 2026. YouTube memberships. YouTube has notified me that I'm eligible to set up memberships. I've seen some other channels who recently started doing that. I think it's really, really cool. So it's something that I want to consider maybe adding at some point in time to the channel. Sell products at a market. So this is kind of tied to that other one where I want to release a crochet product. But this would be actually bringing it to the market and figuring out how I would display it and do all that good stuff for crocheters that are coming through the market. Yarn buying freeze. I have so much yarn, but I think we all do. And I was thinking to myself, it might be a cool challenge to set up a yarn buying freeze where for X period of time, I don't buy any yarn and kind of force my creativity to just kind of use what I have. Crochet every pattern not done. I, similarly to the yarn buying problem, have a crochet pattern buying problem. It's not a problem. It's a hobby. They're separate hobbies. But I do have a lot of patterns that I purchased either because they were on sale or it was like a bundle or whatever it is that I have yet to crochet. And at some point I would love to at least have crocheted one of every pattern that I own. I don't know if we'll ever catch up to that, but that's a possible goal. So those are the items remaining on my list. Like I mentioned before, there were more items on this list, but as those things got achieved, I just went ahead and crossed them off, which is cool because it brings us down to this little list here. Before shooting this video, I added the crochet every pattern not done because it was the one thing I thought of today that I wanted to add that wasn't on here. But this is the point where if I had more ideas, I would go ahead and put them here. Okay, my first step for narrowing this down and figuring out exactly what my goals are going to be is to remove a few things. The two groups of things I'm going to remove is I'm going to remove anything that has a question mark at the end because it wasn't something that was solid enough for me to like really commit to it when I wrote it. And the only one on this list that applies to is the free Patreon. So we're just going to go and cross that out. I'm leaving it here as reference, but I'm just crossing through it. The next thing that I do is I remove everything that I cannot directly control. So if there's anything on this list or your list that you look at and you cannot say, if I do X, Y, Z, I will achieve that goal, then it should come off the list because it's not directly in your control. Right off of the bat, there are two things on this list that I know 100%, no matter what I try to do, I cannot directly control. The first of those is becoming monetized. There are things that I can do that help my chances of that, but there is nothing that guarantees that I can do specific steps to get there. Monetization for YouTube requires a couple of different things. It's watch hours, numbers of subscribers, and things like that. Can I ask you to subscribe? Yes, please. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to get enough subscribers, and it doesn't mean that I can directly affect that other than try to do my best to provide good content and, regularly scheduled programming. So we're going to go ahead and remove become monetized. The other one is the Amazon storefront. So I have tried to apply for that. I don't get through. I get associates, but not influencer. There's all this whole thing. I cannot find exactly what the requirements are. If you know, let me know in the comments. But when I kind of Googled it and AI searched it, it alluded to the similar requirements to like YouTube. So if I'm connecting my YouTube account to say, hey, I'm trying to be an influencer, it looks at the fact that I'm not monetized and therefore it's like, yeah, nah. So basically it is similar to the becoming monetized that I cannot control. So reference that. All right. Now that I've removed things that I cannot control, the next thing that I do is I look at things that really get me excited to work on them. So, when I do my personal goals, it's like, what are the things that I'm more likely to lean into that either the outcome gets me excited, the process gets me excited. So I'm going to grab another color here and we're going to go ahead and mark off. I'm going to put a little star next to everything that gets me excited. So doing 3 or more markets is definitely something that I would be excited for. I'm excited for launching my website. I'm definitely excited for designing patterns. Releasing one crochet product would be cool. And selling those products at a market would be really cool. Oh, and you know what? Using resin and putting lights in something I think would be really fun to work on. I think that's it. I think those are the ones that I really get excited about when I look at this list. Next up, what I do is I put a little indicator or flag here of things that I think will challenge me and help me to grow. So we're going to use a red circle for all of the things that I think put me out of my comfort zone. And they're things that even if I fail and I do not achieve said goal, I think will help me grow. Doing markets, 3 or more, is definitely something I can see challenging myself. When I was finished with the 2 at the end of this year, I was definitely feeling a bit of burnout. And I think trying to pre-plan my inventory and the strategies that I would use this year would be different, having done it already now. It also puts me out of my comfort zone because as much as I look forward to the markets, I'm not a super outgoing social person. I know that seems weird because I'm here, but I'm not. I'm more of an introvert. So it does give me some anxiety and take a lot out of me when I go to the market. But at the end of the day, I end up loving that I did it. But it's definitely something that puts me out of my comfort zone to a certain extent. Launching the website is something that I think puts me out of my comfort zone as well. I have so many ideas and I hope so much that it's well received. But you never know when you put stuff out there how well it'll be received. So that gives me that little bit of a discomfort bug. So let's see. Going live definitely puts me out of my comfort zone, and that would be the same thing with Palm Street. I think it's just normal to kind of have those fears of just being live, not being able to edit. When I think about how much I cut out of the mistakes and things that I make when I record these videos and how much editing I do, it makes me really scared to go live. And then Palm Street has that plus that fear of you go live with the purpose of trying to sell stuff and nothing sells. So I don't know what you do with yourself on Palm Street. I haven't actually watched one. That's something I need to do. But anyway, yeah, that definitely puts me out of my comfort zone. Instagram posts weekly would put me out of my comfort zone because I tried that and I did not enjoy the way I was doing it, at least. So releasing a crochet product puts me out of my comfort zone. I'm making things that I think would be awesome and that I enjoy using once I've made a prototype or I think would be a cool idea for a crocheter. But again, it's that whole validation situation where you could put it out there and everybody's like, I don't want that. So that one. Short form on YouTube makes me uncomfortable because it's just, again, short form. Using the resonance set, no, that's good. YouTube memberships would make me uncomfortable. Again, I think it's that whole validation situation. If I'm like, yeah, I've opened it up for memberships, nobody joins, So that one puts me out of my comfort zone. Selling my product at a market would put me out of my comfort zone. The only time I've interacted with other crocheters at a market is usually like they'll say, I crochet or whatever, but I don't know what it would feel like to be like, you know what you're doing. Take a look at these eyes or whatever I put out there at a market and have someone want to purchase that. I don't know. It feels like it did when I first started crochet, the thought of like, no one's probably going to want to purchase my crochet. No crocheter is going to want to purchase my product. Thoughts come into my head. Yarn buying freeze and crocheting every pattern in my list could put me out of my comfort zone to a certain extent, but I don't think it's anything where I'm going to grow from it. I worked with limited yarn before when I only had blanket yarn and hadn't tried anything else and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'm pretty good with that. I think these are the items that put me out of my comfort zone. If I was working on my personal goals, this is probably where I would stop. But I'm going to add an extra step because these are business goals. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my green and I'm going to put a $ next to all of the things that I think will make a big impact to the business, especially from a financial standpoint. They may not all be specifically financial, but it's definitely something that I think is going to impact the business if I carry that forward. So doing 3 or more markets 100% impacts the business because that's where I make most of my money. So that's definitely a financial benefit if I'm able to achieve that goal. Launching my website, I'm going to say affects it as well. Right now, when someone goes to enchantedskein.com, they go to Etsy because that's what I have. I think having the website launched and having a place for people to come if, they're looking me up or doing something like that could definitely impact the business. And like I said, if there's folks that do want to buy things from me or have already, and they kind of have that trust and want to go to the website, they'll get a better price. I will probably get a better margin considering what Etsy does and stuff like that. So I do think that can benefit the business. Designing at least one crochet pattern, that could be additional revenue. And the great thing about digital products like patterns and stuff like that is that it's kind of evergreen. It's there. Will people always want it or buy it? No, my Frankenskein is seasonal, obviously. But once the effort is put in and done, it's kind of packaged and out there, and it's just passive at that point. So that's something I definitely think could provide some sort of impact, albeit it might be small, but it would be some kind of impact. Plus, I think just establishing myself as a pattern designer step by step, the more patterns I create, obviously, the better that's going to be. Palm Street. Palm Street could bring in sales. Again, I have that whole fear and I have to learn everything. But if I started doing palm streets, I might be able to bring in a little more income similar to a market. Releasing a crochet product is definitely another one. If I am able to provide a product that I think has value and other crocheters find value in it, then that could obviously be another source of some sales. YouTube memberships, if someone did decide that they want to go ahead and contribute, then obviously YouTube memberships could bring in some income as well for the business. And then selling products at markets, obviously, same thing. If I'm actually bringing them to a market and able to sell some of the products, then that could bring in some money. Yarn buying freeze, it's arguable. I mean, yes, I'd be saving some money, but am I only saving it for that 30 days and then I'm just going to buy the yarn I wanted anyway after the cutoff date? Probably. So I don't think I'm going to mark that one off. All right, so those are my little tags that I've placed on everything. So now what I want to do is use that to narrow down what my 3 goals for 2026 are going to be for Enchanted Skein. What I do to narrow that down is I first take a look at like what ticked all the boxes. So what gets me excited, what puts me out of my comfort zone or helps me to grow, and what is beneficial for the business. And there are 1, 2, 3, there are 4 things on this list that do that. So I'm going to grab a little piece of washi tape and just kind of put some marks next to the ones that did that here as a reminder / flag. So we have 3 or more markets, launching the website, releasing a crochet product, and selling the crochet products at a market. The next thing I do, if I'm going to consider something to be a goal, is I check to make sure that I can completely define success. Some of them are easier than others. So attending 3 or more markets is pretty simple. Obviously, if I attend 3 or more markets, I have achieved that goal. Launching the website. Launching the website, I need to clearly define what that means because I have so many things in mind and ideas for this website. If I was to say I need to do the full-blown list of ideas for this website, that is not going to be something that is probably achievable inside of 1 year without a ton of focus. And I need to be able to market prep and do stuff like that. Because I know I'm doing markets one way or the other, whether it's 3 or more, I don't know yet. But so launching the website, I'm going to define launching the website as getting the primary site up and running, as well as having the resource set up for you guys. So I want to have a place where you can go and see all the patterns, but I want it to be a little bit more elevated than like the Google Doc, and have like pictures and links to the creator's site. So whether they have a website or it's their Etsy or wherever, I want to be able to have the link to where I bought it. If that is Etsy, I want to have it like almost like a catalog online. So I think I will say pattern catalog, and the about page maybe, because I think that's important. And obviously the home page of the website. So not necessarily having the store piece up and running and things like that, because I do still have Etsy going. I don't have any experience having created an online store. So I think just narrowing that scope to getting that homepage up and running, the pattern catalog for you all, and maybe the about me kind of page all set up is a good goal for 2026. Releasing one crochet product. That one, again, pretty self-explanatory. It's contained within there. The goal is 1, getting one of them out there. I can add to that either on Etsy, or if I happen to have the site to that point, or a market. So these are all like, if I get it to where I can bring it to a market, or I can do this or I can do that, that's going to be considered good to go. Selling a product at a market. So obviously that would actually be executing a transaction. But when I think about that, it's kind of not in my control. I can create the product, I can bring it there, but it doesn't necessarily mean anyone's going to buy it. And I feel like it's going to kind of organically happen of, if I do get the product out there and done, I can sell it at a market. I could also bring other products that I don't have to actually design or develop to a market, like eyes. So I'm actually gonna remove that one. We went that far, but I'm gonna remove it. That's kind of how the process lays out sometimes. All right, so I think these three are pretty viable goals, but there's one last step that I have to do. What I like to do is I immediately identify 3 action items that I can do for each of these. And if I can do that, and those action items aren't blocked by anything, dependent on anything, I could do them right now if I had time, then those are viable goals and I have the start of a plan. And the reason I do this is because the new year is exciting. There's a lot going on with holidays and all that good stuff. But I want to have a place where I can come back to and go, okay, I have 10 minutes, I have an hour, I have whatever it is. I have this time. What can I do to get me that much closer to achieving my goal? So let's do that for these 3 really quickly. Forgive my handwriting. It is atrocious. I'm going to pretend it's because it's on the iPad, but that's that's just an excuse. All right, so 3 or more markets. So I'm just going to put 3 plus markets. So I'm going to identify 3 things that I can do immediately. Now, I can't sign up for a market immediately. There's windows in which you can sign up. I know I want to do the Halloween market. So I have identified that one, but I don't know what the other 2 or 3 or 4, however many I want to end up doing over 3 to achieve the goal, are going to be. So I think the first thing I want to do is, there's a market that happens, I think it's every 3rd weekend or something like that, at the big zoo down here called Zoo Miami. Now, I am not a zoo fan, but I feel like that could be a really cool market with lots of kids and stuff like that. So I want to go attend that. So I'm going to put that on the calendar for as soon as possible. So I'm going to put Zoo Miami attend. The next thing that I can do is some quick research. So what I would really like to do is go and see what markets come up even for last year, just across the calendar for 2026, to see what my options really are. I know I'm not going to go further than a certain, drive distance or something like that this year. So I'm going to pull a list of all markets. Third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with at least 5 contenders. If I can do more than 3 markets, I might do that. But I want to look at what those contenders are, and I'm going to put time of year. Because what I need to do is also make sure that whatever markets I choose, they're in a way that I'm not going to have any issues with being able to execute them. So example of that was this year when I had that Not Your Mama's craft fair. And then it would have been 4 weeks later had I gotten into the Buckler's craft show. And I think that would have been a little too aggressive of a deadline for me. So I want to take a look at that and make sure that the time of year is good for what I'm doing as well. So our first goal of completing 3 or more markets in 2026 is established and ready to go. Next up is launching the website. So my 3 tasks for launching the website, let's see. Put launching web. The first thing that I can do is spend a little time setting up kind of the structure, like the colors, the palette, the fonts and all that stuff. So set up structure would be my first task. My second task is I need to research how I can embed what I want to embed. I have a vision, like I said, of what I want that kind of pattern catalog to look like. So I need to find out what the technology allows. Right now I have Squarespace that renews March, I want to say, April-ish. So if I'm going to make a change, I need to have that decision made before then. So I'm going to research catalog options. And then the last thing is I will actually do the homepage of the website. Because at the very least, I can get the website started so that if someone searches or goes to my web address, they actually go to the site instead of Etsy. And then from that homepage, I can link to Etsy, and here's my Instagram and here's my YouTube and all that good stuff. So I think going ahead and setting up and publicizing the homepage is a great task for the first three. We are all set with launching the website as another goal for 2026. And our last goal for 2026 is that crochet product, that one crochet product. So for that one, I think my first task is I need to narrow down to like 3 or something that I want to choose from. The tricky thing about it, I don't want to give too much away, is some of them require some more prototyping than others. I really want to test the crap out of these things and make sure that before I am saying this is something cool, I made it, I use it, I love it, that I have used it and loved it before I put it out there. But there's no guarantee that if I pick one, I'll have a winner. So I think I need to narrow it down to three prototypes, I'm going to say, because I want to at least have some options and flexibility. Second to that is to generate a prototype for all three of them. I have a couple of things that I've prototyped, but then I just kind of let them die. I didn't have time to spend on them. So I'm going to say generate prototypes. And then the third thing for that, let's see. The third thing for that is going to be research, because I want to just double check and make sure that the things that I'm thinking of doing are not something that's already been done before. And it doesn't mean that it can't be a different version or my own take on it. Like obviously I paint eyes, and if I wanted to release eyes as a product, that's the same thing other people do, but it would be my own spin on it. These are not something like that. I'm just using it as an example. I haven't really done a ton of research. I just kind of had them on my list and haven't done anything with them. But now that it's going to be an actual goal to release one, I want to get my research done. All right. That is my process for establishing my primary goals. So we have the 3 for this year for Enchanted Skein, which are to do at least 3 markets, to launch my website, and to release 1 crochet product. I'm really excited for these. I do think I want to peek at this list one more time and establish something that might be considered a stretch goal for myself, just so that I have something on the back burner if any of these things get moving really quickly, which would be a great thing. Or I just find that I have something else I want to shift my focus to for a little bit. So I think in looking at these, when I'm looking at something that ticked 2 or more boxes, it may be things like Palm Street or YouTube memberships. So I'm going to keep those 2 kind of on the loose stretch goal list, so that if, like I said, any of this other stuff is going really smoothly, maybe I already release a crochet project and I still have 5 months of the year left or whatever, and I want to incorporate one of these into the fold, then I have those available to myself as well. What I really like about this process is it not only makes things stand out visually for me, which is very helpful, but also it kind of makes sure that I'm boxing myself into goals that I know are defined and I know are achievable, and I know the first few steps to get started to give me that momentum to see the finish line. All right, let's get into this week's makes. I don't have a ton of stuff for you this week. I spent a good chunk of time doing some of this. It was holidays, things are kind of hectic right now, but I do want to show you what I have. The first pattern is one of those patterns that I've had in my list for a really long time. I purchased it a long time ago, I think. But it is a pattern by Crochet by Kelsey called Willow the Woodland Wonder. And this is my willow. I made this with Parfait Chunky, some hand-painted eyes. They have like a green and gold brown shift. I don't know if the camera's picking that up. All Parfait Chunky, 5mm hook. He's a little smaller, and I have a little bit of regret. I kind of wish I would have done him in blanket yarn. The one on her pattern photo, I believe, is in blanket yarn. And I don't know why I was thinking like luxurious, velvety, let's go with Parfait Chunky. Naughty Pony doesn't have these colors, or that would have been Naughty Pony. But I think it would have been better in blanket yarn. I think it would have had that fuzzy, warm feeling a little more. I don't know. It would have been a nicer size, but I wasn't even so much worried about that. But anyway, the pattern is written really well. I didn't add the little flowers. It took a good bit of time. I don't know if I was struggling or what, but it was a lot to me, you know, a lot of little parts. It's crocheted into the round, if I recall correctly. Everything was pretty much crocheted in except for the horns, and I want to say the ears. But yeah, it was a good bit of work with all the color changes. I didn't I didn't necessarily gel well with the color change information. Like, it would say to move a stitch over to make everything align, and I think I might have been better off if I didn't do that. But um and there was cleanup. You know, I had to go in and do some cleanup just because it looked pretty rough with the color changes. I'm not the biggest fan of this style legs. I know this is very similar to, gosh, what is it? Madeline Mako, I want to say. Some of her makes are this way. It's not my favorite way to do the legs. So I don't know that this is a pattern I'm necessarily going to make a ton of. I might go in one more time and do it in blanket yarn to see how it is, but it is adorable with its little tail, and I definitely know someone's going to love this at a market. Next up is a pattern that I blame Karen from Yarn and Whimsy for making me buy, which is the Winter Birds pattern by Sweet Lilliput. I decided when I saw Karen's video and she made hers, and the fidget with the legs and stuff, I was like, I need to make that a raven. I need to get that pattern, make it a raven. She had a discount code, by the way, for 30% off. I don't know if it's still effective, but I'll link Karen's video below if you want to check that out and get her code. I think it's in her comments. But what I decided to do, because I knew this was going to have techniques I hadn't done before, I decided to go ahead and make one of the birds directly from the pattern. So I made the cardinal. And this cardinal is made with Juicy Couture yarn that I got on clearance at Joann's, rest in peace. Hand painted eyes for this one. And then it's Parfait Chunky for the beak and mango, I want to say. And then I used Naughty Pony for the black. And then it's got, you know, you can pull the legs. So it's a really cool pattern. I'm glad I used Naughty Pony for the legs. I cannot imagine trying to use something like a Parfait Chunky for these legs and the friction and the fluff that would ensue. So if I do end up making one of these as a raven, it is likely going to be Naughty Pony. But I don't know if I'm gonna. And the reason for that is that this is just a lot of work for this little one. And I don't know that it's something that I can sell for the price that I would want to sell it for the amount of effort. And it was enjoyable because it was the first time I had done it, and it was cool to see how they did this whole leg thing and all of that. But I also was just kind of like, am I done yet? Am I done yet? So if you're going to make the birds the way the birds are in the pattern, and you are a fast crocheter, I'll make this faster the second time, obviously, but yeah, I just don't know how much you can get for this at a market. If you're taking these to market and you've gotten this pattern, share with me, if you don't mind, what you're going to charge for it, because this kind of size and everything makes my brain say $12 to $15, but I feel like it took enough time that it should be closer to 18 or 20, and I don't know that someone's going to pay that. So that's the only downside with it. The pattern is great. Um it I think the photos could have been a little more helpful in my opinion. But I was able to figure it out, so I'm sure you can too. Unfortunately, those are the only two makes that I have to show you. I have something currently on my hook that I'm excited to show you, but it is not done yet, so that'll probably be in next week's video. I hope you all enjoyed our last video of 2025. I don't know why that seems finite. It's not finite. There'll be another video Monday. The videos will continue forever, or as long as I can keep doing them. But it is the end of the year. I hope that you got some value out of watching my goal process. And if you do try it, let me know in the comments down below how it goes for you. I'm always curious to hear if it would work for someone else. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next year. Bye.